Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Grace Gong. Grace Gong worked in venture capital and private equity. She wrote 2 books. One of them landed on #1 Amazon bestseller, new release venture capital category. She interviewed 22 investors on the Forbes Midas list, investors who invested in Facebook, Twitter, Apple, LinkedIn, and 21 founders on Forbes 30 Under 30. She hosts Smart Venture Podcast, where she interviews investors, C-level, VP level executives, former executives of top companies. Welcome to the podcast, Grace.
Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly.
Yeah, so fun to have a fellow podcaster on today, and very excited to hear about all your experiences interviewing these top level executives.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited to share what I know. And yeah, you're hosting an amazing podcast yourself. And yeah, like glad to meet another podcaster like yourself.
All right, so let's just start out by you telling us a little bit about you, how you started out and how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Absolutely. I'm Grace Gong. I was originally from China, came to the US for my undergraduate degree. So after school, I came to San Francisco and I was doing a regular, I guess you can call it 9 to 5 job. While I was working in SF, I started meeting a lot of interesting entrepreneurs in the Bay Area. A lot of them are just starting their own company. And when I saw it, it reminded me of what I was doing in my high school. So I created a school English newspaper in China. Um, Essentially I did, I guess, like you can call it quote unquote hiring, which was I was recruiting people to join my organization and to write newspapers for our school. And so because everyone was trying to study abroad, so we kind of just use our extracurricular activity as our subjects, putting it together for our newspaper. And when I came to Silicon Valley, I realized that was kind of an entrepreneurial experience. And I've seen my friends who turn their high school projects into real life companies. That's the light bulb moment that I realized that I wanted to help other people who were, having these kind of entrepreneurial mindset to actually turn it into a business. So I started interviewing friends for advice for starting companies and then put together a book called The Last Key to Success, which was the first book that I just essentially just creating the book for like-minded people like myself who were probably didn't have the network that are turning ideas into actual companies, to kind of give them a look at how other people are doing it. So that's what I was doing when I came to SF. Then after that, while I was promoting the book, I realized that a lot of founders, one of their critical concerns was raising capital. Because otherwise you're building a lifestyle business, you will not be able to scale as fast as a venture-backed business. So I decided to put together a book interviewing top investors on why they invest in a certain company. So gave the entrepreneur a look at how VC thinks, so they could also be able to adapt that mindset when they were creating their own businesses.
Wow. So when you were interviewing like investors, are these people investing in people who are doing startups, or are they, uh, you know, right? What do they call it? Reg A plus, or are they just, um, investing in companies that are already going but just need money to scale?
So I interviewed the investors that I've interviewed are they're all from the Forbes Midas list. At least like for my book, I interviewed was investors on the Forbes Midas list. They've invested in most companies that you probably heard of, like Facebook or LinkedIn or Apple. So I guess it's all scalable businesses, if that's like the question. But yeah, I definitely encounter investor who invest in the, I guess, the consumer tech brand, which may seemingly as I wouldn't say it's a lifestyle business, but it's more related to the consumer, I guess.
Got it. Got it. And then when you were when you were interviewing the entrepreneurs, what are some of the things that you learned that just really stood out to you? They said, "Oh, I never knew that. Wow, that just turned a light bulb on for me."
That's a great question. So I think the major thing I've learned from interviewing entrepreneurs is I think all of them are really action driven. I've had friends I had friends who wanted to start a company for a long time. So they keep telling me they wanted to do this, but they may consult the wrong friends. Then they could get advice from other people, say this will never work. So they just stopped actually pursuing it. But most people that I've interviewed, I think the common thread is they all took action. They all turned their idea into at least one step further than thoughts. So I definitely feel like that's a great quality to have in life. You gotta try something instead of just think about something over and over again. When I was working in China in venture capital, I feel like that energy also happens to Chinese entrepreneurs. They're all very action driven. I feel like everybody was testing out the ideas basically right on the spot. I definitely feel like that energy is just something that's really incredible. Everyone who is listening to this podcast should probably considering adopting that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great strategy. So, of the people that you interviewed, how many of them started businesses and they failed? Like how many businesses did they have to fail forward into before they actually got one that was clicking and working and profitable?
Yeah, I this is such a great question. Even this morning, I saw one of my friend post on LinkedIn says, I'm sure you heard about Clubhouse, right? So people mention Clubhouse founders had tried maybe 10 times before Clubhouse exists. So this is like Clubhouse is the founder's 10th startup. I mean, I don't personally know if that's true, but it sounds really believable because just most business will fail. And I definitely feel like failing should be celebrated. Well, I want to say just celebrate. Oh, I got a failure that I'm going to celebrate. But like, I feel like the attitude should be don't treat it like a disease or anything. No one overnight success, quote unquote, is actually an overnight success. Is normally they failed multiple times and then they realize their learnings throughout the process.
Exactly. And I found that to be true too. Your overnight successes usually were 10 years in the making. Overnight
Absolutely. Yeah.
successes, you don't know what they were doing little by little, like the musicians who were practicing their guitar for years and years, and hours and hours and hours. Then they become famous.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I totally agree.
so yeah. And as people are developing their businesses and they're failing forward, if you will, and seeing what works, what doesn't work. What is different about an entrepreneur that keeps them going when other people quit?
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been constantly thinking about it myself. I think that's just grit. I think one of the characteristics that I think after I chat with many successful VCs is they're looking for someone who will uh, like run through walls. basically it's just like how you get back up after you fall, right? So I definitely feel like the grit is something that it definitely could be built. It's like a muscle that you can uh, just practice day by day. I think the best part about a successful entrepreneur is they realize, they're not going to succeed right away, but they still feel like they're going to pursue an opportunity instead of not doing anything at all. I think that's really respectable. And I think to build that mindset, A, it's really important. B, I feel like it's definitely something that's buildable. It's not something you just born with. And like it could be built in many different ways, from maybe exercising. So maybe in the past, I think just a personal story is like I didn't like exercise when I started. I was really overweight, and then I feel like it just really built day by day. I started with 5 minutes, then I run for 15 minutes, then I do 60 minutes. I've been just working out every single day for 60 minutes in the past like 5 years. I think it just not only physically, I'm way more in shape than I was, but also I think that changed my mentality about approaching really difficult problems. So I definitely recommend to start with something that you can and start small, instead of just trying to, I'm going to do 500 push-ups by tomorrow. That's probably not going to work, but I think start small and then trying to show up every single day. I think that grit and then the resiliency could be built throughout very small things and start there. So I definitely feel like that may help you to build a really unstoppable mindset.
And have you ever interviewed someone who they're talking about their family? Like a lot of us, we are all people, even though we're entrepreneurs, we're business people, where we're, going to our job, whatever it is. But then there's our piece where there's our family, and every family has their ups and downs, their challenges, someone sick or whatever. Have you talked to any entrepreneurs where they talked about how they had to handle the family thing so they can actually stay clear and continue on their journey in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because it's such a personal issue, some of the conversations happening privately that I had with mentors or founders that in the past, but I definitely feel like a lot of personal issues will interfere your business decisions. There's many people that have either relationship issues or family troubles, and throughout their career, I think it's sort of like dealing with any type of challenges. You just gotta focus on different things at different times. So if you're at work, probably concentrating on work, that may actually be a distraction for your personal issues. And also don't take it personally when something happened in your life. It doesn't necessarily means like there's something wrong with you. So I personally feel like just I guess separating the personal experience and business is very important. And I've observed like many like friends or really successful people, they went through tough times in personal life wise, but they can still really run a thriving business. And I definitely think you can do it as well.
Mm-hmm. So, how important is the people that we actually spend the most time with? They say the 5 people that are the closest to you are going to influence you the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. That's actually another reason why I created my podcast. like yourself, you are trying to share knowledge from people from different aspects. For my podcast, I'm trying to share business experience from many successful people who runs really successful businesses, like the former CEO of Dunkin' Donuts, former CEO of Chipotle, VP of Google, Facebook, Amazon, LinkedIn, and just I think learning from them, even through podcast, is a way of spending time with them. You are listening to how they think about things. You are learning about how they basically how they think about their life issues and how they treat work. And basically also you can also learn a lot of insider experiences from these top either executors or investors. I think just consuming these knowledge is a way of spending time with them. Although you're not asking the question yourself, but I think a lot of your problems in life could be solved while listening to the way that they were treating certain things. So I definitely recommend people to just pursuing learning while you have a little free time, either listening to Kimberly's podcast like this one, or, check out my podcast as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And then, you said you came from China and then you were here and you're interviewing these entrepreneurs, these investors. And did you catch the entrepreneurial bug? And how does that show up in your life?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think entrepreneurship is sort of like a mindset. Um, so basically, I think entrepreneurs all have a problem that they're trying to solve, right? So that's why they're an entrepreneur. If they're copying something else, that's probably just called starting a business. Entrepreneur is normally solving a problem that it exists in the world, but no one has solved it in the past. I think that's such a kind of an honorable mindset. Like, if something doesn't work, instead of waiting for someone to solve it, you take the action, you go solve it for yourself and then for people like yourself. I think that mindset is really positive. And I feel like number two, what that kind of changed the way I think is, I guess everything is figure outable. Instead of, like, this microphone is made by a person, right? So, Kimberly, you wrote books, like it's like sort of everyone could create a product that solves people's problem, right? So, having the belief in yourself, in your ability is super important. And I definitely feel like that's such a great learning as well. And then number three is, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like I saw everybody that my age doing something successfully. The number one thing is taking action. You created this podcast yourself, right? I'm I guess, almost 200 guests on the show, right? So you built it from the scratch, and taking that action, making yourself a little bit better every single day, getting inspired by different people from different resources. And just, a lot of people were thinking about creating a podcast. Every single day, someone on LinkedIn asked me how to start a podcast. But you started one. You didn't really sit there and then wait, and then we wouldn't even meet if you did nothing, right? But you took the action, you put in the work, you scheduled with everyone. And I think that piece is such an important life learning that I've learned from entrepreneurs like yourself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that's just the perfect time for me to do a promo. So I'm just fitting in right here. So anyone who's been thinking about doing a podcast for a really long time, but you haven't done it because you don't know how to do the technical stuff, or you don't know how to get guests, or whatever it is, you don't know what to do, whatever's stopping you, I am doing a podcasting course, and it's called an intensive because it's done on 2 weekends. You'll have it all done, up and running. I'll get you going. So anybody that's a potential podcaster, please let me know. I'm happy to help. So, but one of the reasons I actually started my podcast is that I love connecting with people and I love to learn from people. And, um, and through doing this, I have met people from all over the world, all different walks of life. And every time I talk to them and learn about them, and we become friends, acquaintances, and I'll say to them, hey, who do you know who would be a great guest for the podcast? And guess what? They always have a really wonderful person. And what's happening? The reach is expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. And I am getting to know people who I want to have close to me, just like you were talking about. People that I want to be around, the people who have a positive mindset, who want to do something good and positive in the world. So how has that helped you as far as getting to know these different people? How has that influenced your life?
I think definitely in a really positive way. I guess my journey in like of meeting people started way before podcasting, before my books. And I think one of the big like networking piece is, I think the lesser you try, the more successful you are. But I mean, I don't count podcasting as short, right? So I think, podcasting is a great way to meet people. Like you mentioned, someone introduced you to someone, right? So I think that happened to me when I was just moved into San Francisco. I took an improv class in San Francisco. So I made so many friends there, way easier than I met someone at a career conference or something. And those relationships that I built, or while I was watching a comedy, and then when I was standing in line, I would talk to people in front of me or behind me, and just these unintentional experiences really help me build trust with people. And actually, when it comes to career challenges, or trying to find a job or something, I think those unintentional friendships that kind of help me a lot more than if I just reach out to a person on social media, bluntly say, hey, I want a job or something. So I definitely encourage people to have a hobby, have something that you care about outside of work. And, I always ask, one of the questions that I ask my guests, one of the stable is, where can we find you outside of work? So that can kind of show you, what they like to do, the human side of things. So I definitely feel like, having a passion and surrounding yourself with good people, regardless of, just checking them out on LinkedIn before adding them on LinkedIn or anything. Well, like you should, in general, I feel like that helps me a lot to I guess, to quote unquote network or build friendships.
Mm-hmm. And I have to totally agree with you. I mean, my best friendships are the ones where I was interested in getting to know the person, and I'm truly interested in people. I mean, sometimes I like to know just the simplest nitty gritty things. I had a friend once that I said, what do you notice about me that's not like other people? And he said, you can listen to someone talk about what they're interested in, and it can be really boring in detail. They go into detail, and anyone else would be like, oh, I'm falling asleep. But you just like sit there in rapture, just listening to the person. But really what I'm interested in is just getting to know them and who they are. And those are the, kind of deep relationships that really the ones that you keep for years and years and years. Those are the kind of relationships that, let's say you hadn't talked in a year, but you can call them up a year later and you say, hey, I need help with this. Oh, sure, no problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel That's a by the way, that's such a great quality, being present, being able to listen to someone. Actually, it's funny, I launched an episode where I interview Nicole Queen. She is such a wonderful VC in the VC world. Basically, I asked her what is one skill that she's constantly trying to improve. I think she mentioned being present. I think that's such a great point. You know, every single day, so many people are trying to promote this, promote that, or like trying to talk about their own opinion. But sometimes taking a step back, listening to what other people are saying is I think is such a important skill that to have, people that probably just ignore. And, you know, I watch some of your past guests, that your interaction with the past guests, you are such a great listener. You always let the guests finish. And I think that is an actual great quality to have in building a good friendship or a good relationship with people.
It really does. And people, this has been said over and over, people do business with people they like and they trust.
Yeah. Yeah, of
And,
course.
that's how you have to build those relationships. So when people are thinking, well, I need a VC, I need someone to support my business. Well, first you have to create a friendship or some type of relationship. And then you have to actually help them see the value of what you're doing, the problem you're solving. And once they do that, you're going to get the money you need. You're going to get the support you need. And that's how movements start.
Yeah, totally. Um, I would ask you what's your listening tip, but I don't know if it's appropriate for a guest to ask you a
Oh, of
question.
course it is. Of course it is. I think it's just being truly interested in the person, and also being, when I'm having a discussion with someone, I'm looking for a win-win situation. So I've been working a lot personally on receiving, because I'm one of those giver, giver, give. And it
Mhm,
can go out of balance. And that was actually
mhm,
starting to happen for me. So now I'm working on that give and take relationship. So I'm not always listening, I'm not always talking, or I'm not always giving, or I'm not always receiving. It's just balance. So I think just being truly interested and not be thinking about what you're going to say next. You don't have to worry about that. The
mhm,
the conversation will flow. I say something, you receive it, you understand it. You can say something, I receive it,
mhm.
I understand it. Communication is back and forth in understanding what other people are saying, not just trying to think about what you're going to say next.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, because not really pre-think about what the other person is going to say just helps a ton, no matter if it's interviewing or just creating any sort of relationship, because you don't really know what they're going to say. And you sometimes when you predict something and you have like 45 answers to that question, sometimes it just don't work, because they're going to say something completely different. And I think this is such a great skill to have, regardless if it's business or just creating friendships.
Mhm. So let's go back to building a business. And let's say you have a goal to make a certain amount of money and to be at a certain place in your business. How do you start out, and how do you get to where you want to go?
I think one thing that I personally do is I write down what's my end goal, and then kind of break it down into timing wise. Let's say by the time I'm 50, I want to run this size of business. And then what should I do to get there? I think one of the great episode about planning a good career is I actually chat with Shirley Archambault. So her book called Unapologetically Ambitious, she was talking about how she planned her career from early on in her life to she's very successful now. She's the board member of Verizon and multiple other companies. So she's certainly a really successful person. And when I read her book, I just feel like she planned out how she is going to become a CEO, and then what type of roles that she should get into. For example, sales, when people sort of look down on sales, and then, but she took it because, this is what it's going to take to get her to her dream position. And when it comes to my own life, I kind of do similar things to basically have an imagination of what's the end goal, and then just plan, like, if I want to get here, what do I do to get to there? So basically, I would write like a general plan. But I think whatever your plan is, definitely also execute. I think execute is more important than just having a plan. I think take actions to, instead of focusing on what exactly is the end goal, focusing on what's your next milestone. And after you achieve that milestone, you can think about what's next. So I think taking action, setting some sort of milestone, although you plan ahead, but you don't really always just look at the end goal. Like I will not be able to be a Fortune 500 CEO tomorrow. So I definitely feel like, taking the action, focusing on what you can do now to achieve to your next milestone is more important than, looking at the end goal every single day.
Mm-hmm. So when you were interviewing people, did you see a difference between people who were kind of on the corporate track as opposed to entrepreneurs who kind of created their own thing and created their own business? And was there a difference in where they started out and how they proceeded?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the corporate route, I definitely feel like you should have a benchmark on by what age you're going to do what. So I feel like when I look at people that are successfully achieving a certain goal, normally they have that goal in mind from the beginning, regardless if it's an entrepreneur or a person who is very successfully in the traditional corporate world. I definitely feel like the entrepreneurial route is more diverse. So a lot of people's goal doesn't meet, but they achieve it in a different way. I've heard about musician turned entrepreneur that are doing something radically different than what they were originally planning. But I definitely feel like that also takes plan. So it just, you may not plan that that long. So I guess like the corporate world, you can plan from age 20 to 45 to 50 to 60, because it's kind of predictable how long it's going to take you to get to a certain position. But for entrepreneurial world, it is plannable, but because of today's age, the technology moves so fast, and the adaptation of the technology really varies in different country, in different sector. And I think that is less predictable, but you could also plan for for yourself, but nothing can stop you from planning. But it's just the execution may be different than someone who really want to succeed in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm. And have you interviewed many people who they're like the YouTube stars or the social media people who their product is themselves or their product is their channel? And how does that differ?
I think I personally haven't really picked the social media sensations myself, but I certainly feel like living in Silicon Valley, observing what's happening on Clubhouse or on other social media, I think a lot of venture capitalists or a lot of people in the startup world is kind of becoming the celebrities. When you talk about celebrities nowadays, I think one of the celebrities is Elon Musk. He's a business person, right? Mark Zuckerberg, business person. And I feel like I sort of see a trend of business people kind of they all becoming these mega celebrities in some way. You know, people knows them, and people listen to them, and people trust them. People trust whatever they sell. You know, Tesla sell these shorts, right? So it's so interesting to see how that's been happening. I definitely see a trend of people really sort of building a brand for themselves in the business space.
Yeah, I see that all over the place, and many coaches coming out of the woodwork. Coaches from, you can get coached on just about everything now. And some
Yeah.
of those coaches are even becoming, celebrities on social media. So people are creating their own, their own businesses, their own brands, their own way of doing things. And it's just really, really surprising, like you said, how quickly things are moving. Is there any other ways that people can actually just accelerate their career?
I think listen to my podcast.
Yeah,
I'm just
hey,
kidding.
promo. There you go.
So I mean, like, actually, I created it for people who don't typically have access to these I guess the business celebrities, because they're really great at what they do. So they're probably not the biggest voice on social media because they're really focusing on doing their work. I'm nothing against people who promote themselves on social media. I definitely see a lot of hardworking people also do that. But it just, because a lot of business people are more low key. They're not really trying to be famous or trying to be very all over the place. So I definitely feel like podcasting is a lot of podcasts are great learning sources, like your own podcast or Smart Venture podcast, which is my podcast. They share these business resources. They share these things that they've learned over many years, over many mistakes. And I'd say, why not learn from other people's and learn from other people's mistake than making the same thing wrong, like on your own, right? So
Yeah. And with the venture capitalists, what are some of the same things they all say that they want or they're looking for? What's some of the main things?
I think the team. So when it comes to investing, I definitely feel like almost all VCs mention about if you're having an A team executing a B idea is more likely to win than having a B team executing an A idea.
That's great. Short and succinct. So, just to change to a personal question, what gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life?
I think meeting people like yourself, just learning from very smart and interesting people in different categories, I definitely feel like that gives me a lot of joy.
And I'm going to steal one of your questions. So, where can we find you when you're not behind the microphone podcasting?
Oh, I'm editing the podcast, but I'm just kidding. I think I spend a lot of times like on an elliptical machine and then listening to audible books or listening to podcasts. Yeah, I really enjoy just learning new things. Other than that, I would be maybe baking a cake or something. I feel like I'm really like home buddy. Like I'm really just like staying in. I mean, I also like going out, but during the pandemic, I feel like staying in is very important. So
Yes, that makes sense. So, just so people can connect with you and also just find you, why don't you tell us about your podcast and just wherever they can connect with you?
yeah, thank you. My podcast is called Smart Venture Podcast. You can see it on everywhere on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, and pretty much everywhere. And the best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn. You could find me on the Smart Venture Podcast company page, or you could find me under just Grace Gone. That's just my LinkedIn handle.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Grace, for being on the podcast today and for all your great information. It's been wonderful getting to know
Thank
you.
you so much. You as well. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for having me.
Yeah. So I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, extraordinary life?
Listening to this podcast
Oh,
and just go out there and do it. So
all right. Thank you so much, Grace. We'll talk to you again soon.
thank you so much.